Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of the DC Capstone Report. Today on the DC Capstone Report podcast, we're going to take a look at the offense, the University of Alabama football offense, heading into this spring, getting ready for the upcoming season. In the first segment, we're going to take a look at what we can do offensively to make some adjustments, what some different changes we might make in our offense this year to improve over last year. In our second segment, we're going to take a look at some returning players on offense and what might they do to make a difference for our offense going into spring practice. And finally, in our third segment, we're going to take a look at some of the needs that need to be addressed during the spring in order to have our offense ready to begin this upcoming year.
The DC Capstone Report is featured each Tuesday morning on Tide 102.9, The Morning Blitz with Martin Houston. You can listen live at Tide1029.com.
Well, it's great to be with everyone again. Hope everyone enjoyed our last podcast. We have a lot of great people listening and got some comments and questions. So thank you all for listening to this podcast. Lance and I really appreciate it. Today we're concentrating on this podcast on the offense. Next week we're going to look at the defense. But in this first segment, we're going to take a look at some of the things that the offense needs to do going into this year, what we can look for, see some improvement, and take advantage of this spring opportunity to see some improvement going into this off season as we get ready for the upcoming year. Well, basically, as we're coming off last year, we know if you looked at our team was very good offensive production-wise. Looked like our philosophy was to pass the ball. We had some great wide receivers, good quarterback. It looked like we were going to pass the ball, and then we were going to run the ball out of a run-pass option set. That really boded well. If you look at the overall offensive production, it's probably one of the best ever in the history of Alabama football this past year. But even having such a great offense, there were some issues that came up with our offense during some of the games. If you look at our games against the top defenses that we played, if you look at the LSU, Mississippi State, Georgia, and Clemson, those I consider to have the top elite defenses that we played, our offensive production really took a hit against them. And I think there's several reasons for that. Going up against good defenses has caused us to take a look and maybe see what we can do this year going in and really want to make some changes in our offense to improve. It's hard to say, hey, you want to improve at the different positions when we did so well offensively, but if you break it down and look at the offensive production during those games, there is some room for improvement. First of all, looking at the quarterback play, it looks like we had a good quarterback play last year between Tua and Jalen Hurts. Obviously, Jalen Hurts is gone, so he's not there this year to help out in that quarterback play or quarterback rotation. Gonna have Tua. It's gonna be Tua's show. He'll be the one. We got Mac Jones and then some young freshmen coming in, and Talia and Paul Tyson, and we got Lane Hatcher, of course, still on the team as well for opportunities there. But it looks like it's gonna be Tua's job, Tua's chance to shine this year, and he's gonna have some great people to work with. So the offensive philosophy, you would think, hey, it's gonna be a passing philosophy because we probably got the best wide receiving core. Coming back, the best four wide receivers in the SEC, definitely in the SEC, possibly in the nation. You got Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs III, Jerry Jeudy, and Jalen Waddle all coming back at the wide receiver position, which seems like a great setup for Tua and the passing game. One of the things I think kind of hurt us last year was the scheme that we ran in the RPOs and the lack of downhill running. And what I mean by that is the blocking schemes when you have a RPO is not the same as if you have just a run plan and that you set up the pass off of the run. A run pass option, the RPO, means that the quarterback has a choice to either run the ball or the running play or a passing play. Therefore, the offensive line's got to block as if it's a passing play so that they don't get too far down the line of scrimmage and be illegally downfield during the passing play. So that does not allow them to drive block and drive their men, just punish and push. So Alabama didn't do much of that last year. And that's a kind of going a different direction from our philosophy in the past. Our philosophy in the past has always had a downhill running attack with some great backs, some great linemen that could really push the ball down people's throats and set up the pass off of play action off of those. and would allow us to take time off the clock and at some points in the game just take over and run the game out and just impose our will on the other players or the team. That didn't happen much last year with our running game. So I think a good opportunity exists this year to increase our run production and maybe change our offensive philosophy. To me, I think we're going to, with the hiring of Steve Sarkisian, I believe we're going to see more of, instead of a run-pass option style, I think we're going to see more play-action passing style. Now, we're definitely not going to give up on the pass. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that, because we have too great of weapons in the passing game, and Tua and our wide receivers, but I think that we can complement that with a good running game. We have done it in the past and without such good receiver or quarterback play. So I think we'll see a switch in the offensive philosophy to do more of a run, instead of a run-pass option, to be looking to do more of a play-action passing off of the running game. Now that's going to allow our offensive line to run block and then know when they're pass blocking and get their gap blocking, get their scheming, and do a good job on the offensive line. It's going to allow our running backs to be featured. And then in the second segment, we're going to talk about some of these players that have opportunity to contribute coming back. But if you run the ball to set up the pass, it does two things. It helps your defense. It helps take time off the clock, keep your defense off the field, and still allows you to get the deep ball on the passing plays. I think opportunities will exist for us in the play-action passing game and to really elevate our deep passes. I really believe Tua can be accurate throwing the ball deep, especially when he has wide open spaces there. And so I think that's really going to enhance our ability to throw the deep ball. The good thing about these wide receivers offensively, your philosophy doesn't have to be to throw the deep ball every time, because every one of these wide receivers, all four of them, have the ability to take a 2 to 5 yard pass and turn it into a 20 to 40 yard pass with their legs, because they're so good with run after the catch. So I look for the offense to really work on in the off season during the spring to put this play action passing in. Now, does that mean we're going to abandon the run pass option altogether? I don't think so. I think Steve Sarkisian has had plenty of touches with the run pass option. I think he'll still keep some in the playbook. We're bringing in offensive analysts that have a lot of history and a lot of experience in running these run pass options in Major Applewhite. So I think during the game planning, the scheming, they'll always have those plays in there. But we're going to have some downhill running plays that are just called runs, and some play action passes that are called off of those same formations in order to take advantage of the defenses we come up against. There'll be some defenses that we face that their linebackers are overly aggressive, that the run pass options will work great against. But there's going to be some other defensive backfield play that we'll come up against that the play action passing will take advantage of. So I think one of the areas that we can improve in is changing our offensive philosophy to take advantage of the personnel that we have, being a quarterback and wide receivers and running backs that can run the ball and throw the ball downfield. So another thing I think is controlling the clock. I think we have opportunities to extend plays on third down with running the ball by having some running plays that gains 2 or 3, 4 yards at a time and can just impose our will on the other team. I think that really sets us up for an opportunity to control the clock. And I don't think we did a good job with that this past year on offense. I think a lot of times we scored in some quick ways that kept our defense on the field for a long time, and I think it showed later on. When you have an offense that's able to control the clock, run the ball, and pass the ball efficiently on third down, keep going to a point of keeping the ball control, then I believe you help your defense, and we're going to need to do that. So I think our philosophy this year on offense is going to be controlling the clock more as well. So we look for a more of a play-action passing scheme, running the ball with more run blocking schemes, and look to control the clock on offense. I think those are all areas that we can improve on. Also, I think protecting the ball and less turnovers. We only had 6 interceptions, I think, last year, but those interceptions came against our elite defenses, those 4 games. So they were talking about those interceptions came in the games against LSU, Mississippi State, Clemson, and Georgia. So I think if we can protect the ball in those when we face those elite defenses, it will also have an opportunity to have our offense be successful. So I look for opportunities in the spring to improve on these, to put our game planning in, put our scheming in, and I believe we'll have an opportunity to do that on offense. It'll bode well as we go into the summer practice and into the fall. We'll see our offense really even do better than it did last year with the playmakers that we have.
You have been listening to the DC Capstone Report. The DC Capstone Report is brought to you each time this week by RollTideBama.com and FreelancePitchers.com.
Well, in our second segment, we're going to take a look at some of our returning players and the opportunity that they may have on the offensive side of the ball to make an impact. And up first, you start no greater than right at the top, and that's Tua Tagovailoa. He comes back in as a returning starter on offense. As I said in the first segment, he's his show this year. There's no Jalen Hurts looking over his shoulder. It's him to start with. Your reserves behind him are Mac Jones and Lane Hatcher, and then your signees coming in, of course, Tua Tagovailoa and Paul Tyson. I expect that Tua Tagovailoa comes in this year without the pressure of the Jalen Hurts situation looking over his shoulder, is going to have an opportunity to elevate his game. And I know he did great last year, but I think he has room for improvement. So one of the returning starters that I look for improvement out of is Tua. I think if he stays healthy and is able to continue to improve, I think you'll see him make better decisions on the offense, especially in throwing the ball in tight spaces to keep from having the turnover. I think you're going to have him make better decisions when we do run the run-pass option to be able to know when to run the ball, when to throw the ball. And I think our offensive philosophy has switched to a more play-action passing that is going to open up his ability to improve greatly in downfield passing. And to be honest, not only him returning is important, the wide receivers that we return is equally as important. So you look at those wide receivers that are coming into this season. You got Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Devonta Smith, and Jalen Waddle. They're coming in as the top four receivers, probably the best receiving corps in the country. As I said earlier, I think Tua gets to rely heavily on those receivers to make a big impact with their offense. So I look for all of them, if they stay healthy, to lead our offense this year. Returning for our running backs, we lose Josh Jacobs and Damian Harris to the NFL draft coming up, and that leaves us with Najee Harris, most likely the starter. He's got the most experience coming in. Then behind Najee Harris, you got Brian Robinson and Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford played only in 4 games last year, so he gets the red shirt. Brian Robinson has been played on special teams and in the backfield, has some experience, but not near as much as Najee Harris. I look for Najee Harris to be leaned on early in the spring practice and on into the fall. I think you get him more carries. I believe Najee Harris is going to be one of those backs. Is the more you get him the ball, the better he's going to be. What he needs to improve on is out of the backfield catching the ball, I think, and on his blocking. I think the same goes with Brian Robinson. He wants to see the field. I think he'll improve on his blocking. Probably one of the most underestimated, unheralded things that last year that Damian Harris and Josh Jacobs did was their blocking. If you watch them on film, they made some wonderful blocks, and they caught the ball well out of the backfield. So I think Najee Harris and Brian Robinson can both run the ball, but look for them to improve this spring, working on their out of the backfield pass catching ability. So that's an area that I think that look at those returners on. Now the wild card there, of course, is Trey Sanders, our signee, 5-star coming in. He has an ability to come in as a freshman and make a big impact. And Coach Saban has showed that he's not afraid to go with freshmen when they come in and if they can make an impact. So I think if they do well in the fall when he comes in and is able to practice, you might see Trey Sanders in the mix there as well. One of the places I think on offense that we don't have a returning starter, we're going to have to find somebody, is at tight end. Miller Forstall, Kedrick James, Major Tennyson, and Michael Parker all return, but none of them were stars last year. We lose Hale Hinges, we lose Irv Smith Jr. I think 2 of the best tight ends in the business, just 2 great blockers and catchers as well. So I think that's where we're going to have a chance to improve, to try to find the people that's going to be there. Kedrick James has got a lot of work to do to get back in the good graces of the coaches since he was suspended prior to the championship game. So he's got a lot of work to do. And so he and Major Tennyson has had some issues off the field that they're going to have to get worked through and get back in the good graces of the coaches. I think Miller Forstall has an opportunity to if he can return to his form prior to his knee injury, has the opportunity to start this coming year. So that's definitely a position where we're going to have to look to filling some voids there. The offensive line is what's left. And returning from the offensive line, you got Alex Leatherwood, you got Jedrick Wills coming back. I look for them to be your tackles. And then we're going to have to fill in the middle spaces there with players. Now, I would have said that Deontay Brown was going to be one of your starters, prior to his problem off the field, but he got caught up in that off the field issue prior to the championship game that Kendrick James was in, and he has got to get back in the good graces of the coaches. There's some things he's got to do. He may be facing some NCAA sanctions for what took place as well. He may be missing some games, so I look for him to be a contributor as well if he can get back in the good graces of the coaches and fulfill his responsibilities of his discipline. Chris Owens is probably going to come in and play at center. Matt Womack has played tackle and guard. He could really come in and play a guard position there unless somebody else overtakes him. You got Scott Lashley, Emil Akior, Tommy Brown, Kendall Randolph, Hunter Branyan. All those are reserves from last year that could come in and play. We had some great signees come in like Evan Neal and Pierce Quick, Maury Knight, Tanner Bowles, Darian Delacourt. All of them have a chance, and maybe Evan Neal and Pierce Quick have a chance to come in and play. Last year caught up in that off the field incident was also Elliott Baker. The interesting thing on Elliott Baker is he is no longer on the roster that I can tell. Now, maybe speaking prematurely, but I can't find him on the roster anywhere. So time remains to be seen whether or not he'll have an opportunity to come back and contribute. But as far as offensive people coming back, that's what you have. All of these people that I've mentioned have an opportunity to come back and come in this year in the spring and really do work, put work in, so that they can be a factor on offense going into the fall. Well, in this last segment, we want to look at some players to watch coming into the spring. There's some areas, some on the offense to take a look at to see what we're going to do. I think we're going to start off with the offensive line. Who's going to come in and fill the Pierce Baker's role? Who's going to be that center that's able to call the blocks and call the schemes and make the reads and do everything? So I think in the spring we're going to be looking for somebody to do that. That's going to be an integral part of this offensive line. And I think when you're looking at the offensive line, as I talked about earlier in the second segment, I think Chris Owens is probably the person everybody's looking at to do that. But I believe there's some other people, maybe Emil Akior, he might be a potential to come in there at the center position as well. So we've got to find a center. I think during spring practice, that's going to be one of the places to do that. Also on the offensive line, are we going to be able to, what about Matt Womack? How is he going to go and figure into the equation? Will he be able to convert from a tackle to a guard and play? Coach Saban has always been the idea to put your best 5 players on the field. That's why we saw Alex Leatherwood convert to a guard last year. So I think what we're going to do is try to find that in that spring practice, those early signees, some of the early enrollees, and get the opportunity for additional practices. You may see one of those 5 stars. Maybe Evan Neal, maybe a Pierce Quick have opportunities after the fall to make an offensive line as well. But the offensive line's question marks, of course, is center and who's going to play those other guard positions. I think the tackles are probably set with Alex Leatherwood and Jedrick Wills, but I think looking at the offensive line coming out of the question mark, coming out of spring practice, who to look for there. Another on the offensive side of the ball has got to be a tight end. Who is it on the tight end that are going to step up and make a difference? Can Miller Forstall come back after his knee injury and be the same player he was before? Can Kendrick James get back in the good graces of the coaches? Will he even be able to play any of the games? Is he still going to be serving some suspension? Can Major Tennyson live up to his potential, expectations? Can he come in and get back in the good graces of the coaches after his off-the-field mistakes? And can he have an opportunity to show what he can do? Is Michael Parker the guy? He has the length and the strength. Can he come in and show that he can make a push? I think we're going to need 2 of those tight ends to really come out of the spring with an idea who can play. So I look for that to be a couple of guys to take a look at. Can Major Tennyson and Michael Parker make a push to play at the tight end position? And finally, I think the running back. Everybody's looking for Najee Harris to start and to be his team, but can Brian Robinson, can he surprise everyone? Can he come up and make a push to be a starter? Can he push Najee Harris? I think it would be great if he could. And what about Jerome Ford? He comes in after 4 games playing last year. He didn't get to show much. Can he push in the spring to get some playing time? And then finally, who is it? Who's gonna show themselves, solidify themselves as the second string quarterback behind Tua Tagovailoa? Will Mac Jones take the reins? Will Lane Hatcher? Will he come in with an opportunity to do that? Or will it be one of the early enrollees like Talia Tagovailoa or Paul Tyson? Or who's going to shake out during spring training, the spring ball? So a lot of good things on the offense to look for. We got some opportunities, room for improvement. We got some players coming back. And we got some people to look for in spring practice as we head in to the spring, getting ready for the big A-Day game to come on April the 13th.
You have been listening to the DC Capstone Report. The DC Capstone Report is brought to you each time this week by RollTideBama.com and FreelancePictures.com. Be sure to go online and check us out on DCCapstoneReport.com for future updates.